Hi everyone, I'm Jeff Miracola, fantasy artist and illustrator. So for this acrylic painting, I am painting on pre-gessoed masonite. It's 1/8 inch thick masonite. I think it was made by Ampersand. It's called gesso board, and it's only 5 inches by 7 inches. So it's a rather small painting. And you can see I did a pretty crude drawing here on the board already. It was just something I threw out pretty quickly, no plan, just felt like drawing and experimenting. I'm just using purple paint and blue paint right now. Not that the painting is going to end up these colors. I was just using 2 different colors to differentiate the mask that is on the figure that I'm painting. In these early stages of doing these little experimental paintings, it's all about making a mess and having fun, and that's what I like to do. Make a mess and have fun. I also look at these close-ups here. You can see the texture of the gessoed board. It's actually a pretty nice texture. Now back to making a mess and having fun. I just take my brush and put it in a little bit of watered down acrylic paint. Just start splattering the paint all over it. And once that dries, I do a glaze of purple paint over the entire thing. It's purple mixed with a little bit of burnt sienna and maybe a little bit of blue. So now I've mixed my soft body yellow paint with a little bit of heavy body white paint so that the paint is a lot thicker and you can see all the brush strokes in it. I want that too, because that's where the form starts to get a little meaty and have some substance to it. Again, in these early stages here, I'm just trying to find the forms. Sometimes I'll see something in the shapes, in the strange underpainting that will, draw my attention and give me something, a direction to go. After that dries, I do yet another glaze. In this particular painting, you're going to see me do a lot of glazes because I'm trying to build up the surface quality rather quickly too. In between these stages, I'm using a blow dryer to dry the paint. After I put a glaze on, and while it's still wet, I'll use a paper towel to remove some of the paint in the area where I know that I want the light to be focused. Then it's just a matter of going back into it a little bit more controlled in my strokes this time. I'm still, keeping it rather messy, but I'm starting to see some shapes. I'm starting to see some forms. So I'm expanding on those. It's always good to do this, to sit down and work on experimental paintings for yourself. They don't have to be anything grand. They can be just simple little paintings that only take a few hours, but something that you can kind of practice your techniques and practice new materials maybe, or new supplies, so that when you do go and work on an assignment, a commission, or something for a publisher or for a family member or friend, then you've worked out some of the bugs with your new supplies or a new technique. Just doing a little bit of dry brushing there, just letting the paint catch some of that texture on the surface. I'm not adding any water to the paint on the brush. There you go, again with the glazing. This time though, I'm using a clean brush, the wider brush there, to lift off some of the paint that I immediately put down with the 1-inch brush. By doing this, I keep a softer edge to where the dark meets the light. If you've seen any of my other videos, you know that I use this technique a lot, where I push and pull with the paint. I build it up and then I do a glaze to darken it, and then I brighten it up and I darken it and brighten it up and darken it. I do that back and forth until I get the qualities and the tonal values that I want to achieve. Using a palette knife, adds its own little nice textures to the painting. I'm just using straight paint on the palette knife as well. No water added to it or anything like that. Using the side of the palette knife to kind of cut into the surface to create lines. Doing a little bit of everything in this painting. But that's what it's all about, right? Experimenting, having fun. You can see that palette knife is very good for stuff like that, or if you want to create a nice straight line. Now, that line might not be perfect. It'll be a little bit jagged, but it'll be pretty crisp and straight. And that's what palette knives are really good for too. Now, once that dries, I can start to work in the background a little bit to start to define the edges of the character. all the value shifts are quite subtle because that background is so dark from all of the glazing that I've done. I got to start to slowly bring some of those values back to being a little bit brighter. As I was working on the painting, at the top of the head there, it just felt like it needed something. And I started to see some shapes in that mask or that hair or whatever the heck is on the top of that subject's head. So I decided to find some of the negative spaces between those shapes. And that's where you see me adding the blue. And once I added that blue paint to the top of the head there, it just immediately made me think of, that there was some kind of flame or energy of some sort, magical energy, steam, who knows, coming out of the top of this creature's head. So I decided to go with that and work it up a little bit more. Now this is pretty subtle here, but I decided to, give it some red lighting on the side of the subject's face here to mimic some of the red lighting and the fire and whatnot that was happening in the background. It stands out a lot more in the final painting than you can see in this video. But putting that red lighting on the side of that subject's face over there starts to give that head more form, so it's not so flat. Then I do a pretty thin glaze of yellow over the entire painting, just to make everything a little warmer. And again with the dry brushing, this time just using a very small brush with no water on it, just paint, and really scrubbing into the surface so that the surface starts to pick up some of the paint and we can see the texture. Well, once I've homogenized all of the values with the glaze, it's just a matter of going back in and pulling out some of the highlights. Just something I noticed as I was working on this. The painting just said it needed something else, and I figured I've got this glow coming out of the top of the creature's head. Why not have a glow coming out of his mouth as well? I used the palette knife to put on some pretty bright red paint in the background, but I know that when it dries, it's gonna not be so bright. It's gonna get a little bit more dull. And then also put a very thin brown glaze over it to kind of knock the color down a little bit more. And then I come back into the side of the subject's face and hit it with some highlights on the red side. But those highlights aren't with white paint. I do it with an orange paint. And one final thing to add to the weirdness of the entire piece is to create these little light tendrils coming out of the neck piece that's around this creature's head. And there we go, all done. It's a relatively quick painting to do. I think it only took me about an hour and a half. Fun little experimental painting using a bunch of different techniques. That's what it's all about, right? So go paint and have some fun. Bye.